total of 89 cases have now been filed against Obamacare's unconstitutional HHS mandate, which, as we know, forces millions of Americans to violate their religious consciences and pay for abortion-inducing drugs. Now, these suits are necessary because the religious exemption from the HHS mandate is only for churches, their integrated auxiliaries and conventions or associations or churches, and the exclusively religious activities of any religious order. And that means Christian individuals who own ministries or run companies are obviously not exempt. And that is why one of the latest plaintiffs to file a federal lawsuit against the Obama administration is Dr. James Dobson. He's, of course, founder, president, and chairman of Family Talk, and you can hear him on his great radio broadcast, Dr. James Dobson's Family Talk, and he is joining us now to talk about the lawsuit and why he believes this is a cause that is worth fighting for. It's just wonderful to have you back, Dr. Dobson. How are you?
Oh, Janet, thank you for having me on today. It's a pleasure to talk to you, especially about such an important issue.
Well, it is a big deal when someone of your stature gets into the fray here and goes ahead and files a lawsuit. Why did you think this was such an important move?
Well, the Alliance Defending Freedom, ADF, it has been so kind as to file this federal lawsuit on our behalf and behalf of our organization, Family Talk, because it represents what the Obamacare provisions have laid down for us, is that they forced us up against the wall and required us to do something that violates our consciences. It has to do, of course, with giving employees or forcing us to give employees contraceptives that are beyond that. They're abortifacients. They actually result in the death of babies. And we're simply not going to do that. I mean, we'll go out of business before we do that and close our doors, because I'm not going to have anything to do with the killing of babies. And that's what the Obama administration is trying to get us to do. And a little over a year ago, I wrote a letter to my constituency, and in it I said, Mr. President, your policies are evil, and I will not accept them and implement them. Here I am. Come get me if you must. That's how strongly I feel about it.
Well, now it's interesting. In the suit, you state that the defendants have offered entities like yours a so-called accommodation of your religious beliefs by involving, I guess, a third-party claims administrator. Why is that accommodation unacceptable?
Well, it's just absolutely phony. They're saying you're not really doing this. You have a surrogate to do it for you. And so he said this is an accommodation. Instead of our giving the contraceptives or the money for them to use these morning after pills, so-called Plan B, we just get somebody else to do it for us, as though that lets us off the hook morally.
Right.
And, that's just typical of the Obama administration. They are assaulting religious liberty at every turn, and there's a place where you just have to say, no, we're not going there.
Exactly.
And so this lawsuit is called James Dobson versus Kathleen Sebelius. It's filed in a federal court, and it'll be working its way through the judicial system in the months ahead. And the essence of it, really the better answer to the question you asked me is why we're doing this. It violates our constitutional rights to religious liberty, and again forces us and other religious nonprofit organizations to do things we think is wrong. Alan Sears, who is the founder and president of the Alliance Defending Freedom, said that this is one of the most important religious liberty cases in the history of the United States, because never before in history has a president of this great country required people to kill babies or kill others, kill human beings, which is what this boils down to. And so I'm speaking and fighting not on behalf only of Family Talk, but every other Christian nonprofit out there that's being affected by it.
Well, and it's so important that you do because it affects all of us. And I believe it was an interview you were doing a few years back with Chuck Colson about this. And you had said, look back to the founders, look at how willing they were to stand up for religious freedom. And this may well be the issue of our day. Do you still think so?
I absolutely think so. And again, it has so many dimensions to it. I don't know if you know that last week a federal court judge in Utah struck down the ban on polygamy that has stood for 157 years. And they have now done what I predicted. I wrote a book called Marriage Under Fire in 2003, and I said same-sex marriage will lead inexorably to polygamy, and it came last week, and that's in a federal court. And so, it's just on all fronts we're being challenged, and religious liberty is being assaulted. And at some point, Christians have to stand up and say, I've had enough. I'm going to fight it in the courts, and if we lose there, we will spend the rest of our lives in opposition to this country. There's a point at which, as Chuck Colson and others wrote in the Manhattan Declaration, that we will render unto Caesar that which is Caesar, but we will not under no circumstances render unto Caesar that which is God's.
Amen.
And that's the way I feel about this.
Well, it's very important. Why do you think that the Obama administration has done this, to not give religious exemptions to Christian business owners like Hobby Lobby or heads of ministries like Family Talk like yours? Why would they deliberately violate the First Amendment and take the stand they have on this unconstitutional mandate?
Well, it's hard to judge motives, but there's every reason to believe that President Obama and his administration have no respect for the Christian message and Christian beliefs. I think there have been 37, the number may be wrong, but there have been a huge number, the vast majority of presidents who have called for national days of prayer since George Washington did it back in his day. And Abraham Lincoln and, even, I won't even try to name them, but president after president has come to the same conclusion. And as you know, my wife Shirley is chairman of the National Day of Prayer, and we have an event at the Cannon House office building every year where we celebrate the right to pray publicly.
Right.
And President Obama will have nothing to do with it. Shirley was invited to the White House for 8 years during the Bush administration, and she stood and spoke to the president and his invitees for 8 years. President Obama won't even talk about it. I mean, there's just... He issues a proclamation written by somebody else, but those things mean nothing to him, and you see it reflected in the policies that he implements.
Boy, it sure is depressing to see how we have declined, and you're right about that. That is quite distressing to a lot of Christians to see where we are right now. As you know, Dr. Dobson, Hobby Lobby and Conestoga Wood are going to be having their cases against the mandate heard before the Supreme Court, and at last count, there were 33 out of 39 cases that touched on the merits of the HHS mandate case that have won. So how confident are you that our Constitution will prevail in the end on this issue of the mandate?
Well, my attorneys, especially those at ADF, have said that this is a very, very strong case because of the U.S. Constitution itself. We're granted religious liberty rights in the First Amendment to the Constitution, and religious liberty is the first of the rights listed in the Bill of Rights. Yes. And it's very clear. I'm not sure that I can quote it accurately, but it says Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of religion or interfere with the free exercise thereof. This is an interference with our free exercise of religion. We believe it is immoral and it's wrong to kill babies, and we have a right to exercise that.
Yeah.
And the government is coming in to interfere with it, and my attorneys believe that we may very well prevail. But whether we do or not, that's up to the Lord.
Yes.
Our purpose is to be faithful to what we believe is right, and we're going to do that.
Well, you had said a few minutes ago that if you were not to prevail, you would actually shut your ministry down. Would you think that other ministries should follow suit if that would be the case in the future?
Well, I know I'm not the only one that feels this strongly about it. I don't know whether this is an overstatement or not, but a very well-known minister, I don't want to name because he didn't give me the right to quote him, but a very well-known minister told me that he expects to end his life in prison because that's the direction that we're going as a country. And we're either going to stand up for what we believe or we may have to pay the price for it. I don't want that. I don't want it for anybody. But there comes a point at which, let's go back to 1939 when the German Lutheran Church turned a blind eye to what Hitler was doing. Not all of them. Bonhoeffer and others stood up and paid for it with their lives, but they were not going to compromise. And there's a point at which we have to say, we're there.
Yes.
We're there. It's not quite as bad as it was then, but we see where the train is moving. We see where it's going.
Yes.
And we have to determine what we're going to do about it. And this issue of religious liberty is the place to make our stand.
Well, how can we be in prayer for your lawsuit, Dr. Dobson, and for this issue, Christians who are listening right now who are right there with you?
Well, I firmly believe that what we're doing has been inspired by divine leadership, and I believe that the Alliance Defense Fund is out there fighting for what we believe. I would appreciate people being in prayer about it. The judges that we get in hearing this case will make the determination. They have such enormous power.
Yes, they sure do.
I pray that the Lord will give us the right court and the right judges, and that the outcome will be according to His will.